Hundreds pay their respects in Lurgan to victims of yesterday's IRA killings. Progress on key issues at EU summit, but final provisions of new treaty still uncertain. 23-year-old security guard stabbed to death in Dublin fast food restaurant. And Kenneth Clarke and William Hague go through to final Conservative leadership battle. Good evening. Hundreds of people gathered in Lurgan today to pay tribute to the two policemen shot dead by the IRA yesterday. The Northern Secretary Mo Mowlam paid an unexpected visit to the Shankill Road to meet political representatives who are close to loyalist paramilitaries. The visit was made amid growing fears for the future of the loyalist ceasefire. And EU leaders meeting in Amsterdam have issued a strong condemnation of the Lurgan killings. In a statement, they described the attack on the two IUC men as a callous act of terrorism.
The people of Lurgan, young and old, Protestant and Catholic, gathered at lunchtime at the IUC station in the town to pay their respects to the two policemen gunned down in sunshine as bright as today's, moments after setting out on patrol. There was a prayer service organised by a local inter-church group, a book of condolence too, signed by those at the centre of the gathering political storm and by townspeople simply appalled by what had happened. Between them, the two young policemen left 5 children, all under 10, trying to come to terms with their sudden loss. Constable John Graham had 3 daughters. David Johnston, too, left a small family. His clergyman described trying to comfort them.
Angie, David's wife, has 2 children, and there's no question she will hold together for them. The elder boy, Louis, he's 7 and he's a bright spark, and he was both wanting, he knew something terrible had happened, and he wanted to do his best for his mum, and there's no question his mum was wanting the very best for them, and I mean, he wanted to come in while people are there wanting to ask questions and all the rest of it, but she had space for him, she had time for him, and I'm sure, I think they will help each other.
He said David Johnston would have been appalled by talk of retaliation, but another clergyman, Roy McGee, who keeps in close touch with loyalism, said that people should be aware of the dangers.
We're like a pack of lemmings in Northern Ireland, running towards the abyss, and if we're not careful, we're going to hurl ourselves over, and there'll be a self-destruct situation. It's very serious. And people have got to take a step back, particularly the provisional IRA.
And in acknowledgement of the pressure on the loyalist ceasefire, Mo Mowlam paid an unexpected visit to the headquarters of the PUP and the Ulster Democratic Party on the Shankill Road this afternoon, amid growing fears that their cessation could be crumbling. She said it had been a fruitful meeting. Amid those efforts to restrain loyalists, political pressure on Sinn Féin from the incoming Taoiseach, among others. Bertie Ahern's warning of cutting off dialogue with Republicans.
Sinn Féin is about bringing about a peace settlement, and the way to do that is through talking. And closing doors and refusing to talk is a recipe for disaster. It's one of the failures of the past. It's a legacy of the past.
The political fallout, though, will mean little to 2 families, the names of whose loved ones have been unexpectedly added to the North's roll call of sorrow.
Leaders of Fianna Fáil and the SDLP have said they are closer to pushing the peace process forward without Sinn Féin. But Bertie Ahern and John Hume, who met in Dublin today, also indicated that they hadn't closed the door to possible meetings with Sinn Féin, despite the Lurgan killings.
The 2 leaders met for over an hour at Bertie Ahern's constituency office in Drumcondra this morning. Afterwards, both men were pressed by journalists on whether or not they'd have a meeting with Sinn Féin in the wake of the Lurgan killings. The Fianna Fáil leader reaffirmed his position that if the meeting was about a specific proposal for an unequivocal restoration of the IRA ceasefire, then one might go ahead.
We have worked for a number of years to try to move to a position of inclusive talks without preconditions, or at least an understanding on any preconditions that were there, and to move that forward. Now, if that is still the agenda of Sinn Féin, well, I think we continue to work on that. If it's not the agenda, well, clearly John Hume and myself have to move the process forward in another direction, and that we will do. That we will do. Be very clear. We have discussed this morning, and if people are not coming with us, then we'll move forward. We're not going to sit around here waiting for something that's never going to come.
How long are you giving them? Or if you could spell out what you mean, whether or not you're going to meet Sinn Féin or not meet them. I think people are entitled from both of you.
Could I spell out my language to you again and tell me which language you speak if you don't understand it? I will do everything in my power to stop killing on my street. Everything in my power. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Right.
And that means meeting them, you'll meet them.
I'll do everything in my power, but remember this as well, I'm not a government. Governments have additional responsibilities.
We're not talking about it indefinitely waiting around. I don't want to put a period, but it's quite clear we're
we want
into a
an
difficult
immediate
period.
and total end to violence. That's what we want.
Quickly as possible.
Well, attitudes on both sides of the community over disputed orange parades appear to be hardening in the north. The Northern Secretary met Orange Order officials at Stormont and nationalist residents in Portadown today. However, there was no hopeful sign that an agreement could be possible before the controversial Drumcree March early next month.
The Northern Secretary's continuing shuttle diplomacy over the parade's dispute brought her again right to the heart of the matter in Portadown and to her second meeting with the nationalist residents. She described the meeting as part of the final push in the attempts to reach agreement and accommodation.
We will continue to do all we can to see in a couple of weeks that we've got to see if we can get some kind of accommodation, which is really the only way we're going to move things forward.
Dr. Molam left the Drumcree Centre after an hour and without making any further comment, but perhaps with the growing realisation that the final decision on the controversial parade may ultimately rest with her alone. Garvaghey residents repeated their view that in the absence of negotiations with the Orangemen, the march should not be allowed through next month. There was no attempt to put any optimistic gloss on the situation.
Well, I'm not going to raise people's hopes up here, only to see them dashed in a fortnight's time. But I don't see us any further on from the same position we found ourselves at this time last year.
Earlier, a policy statement on parades issued by the Orange Order seemed to offer little hope of compromise. It maintained the right to march was non-negotiable and said the only group Orangemen would talk to about disputed parades was the RUC. Here on the Garvaghey Road in Portadown, there's no doubting the tension in the air as the date for the disputed Orange Order parade looms ever closer. And there's no escaping the conclusion either that the chances for agreement and compromise seem to be as far away as ever.
European leaders meeting in Amsterdam